So as I start every community meeting, this is public and recorded, and today is Thursday, June 9th, and this is the Kubernetes community meeting that happens weekly. This morning, we have on the agenda a node problem detector that will be demoed, and that's with Lantau Lu. Then we have no why do you contribute segment this week. We will begin those next week with Huawei, or return to those next week with Huawei. We have a 1.4 release schedule proposal from TJ Golterman, and then we have an update on the product management working group that was formed, and that will be from Ihor, who is here, as well as David Aronchik and Mike Saparov when they join us. If anyone has any SIGs reporting that they want to do, please put that onto the agenda, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And then we've got a couple of notices, which is we are not going to have the Asia-friendly timing once a month anymore. We didn't have enough people joining from time zones where it was more convenient. And the next notice, of course, is now is the time to get your documentation into 1.3. And if you want to help us figure out how to celebrate Kubernetes' first birthday, please send a note to me or Bob Herdinsky, and our emails are both in the notes. So with that, Lantau, are you game to get started and give us that demo?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Let me share my screen. Can you see my slides?
We can, yes.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lantau. My GitHub ID is randomlio. I'm from the Google Kubernetes node team. And today the topic is about node problem detector. It's an alpha feature introduced in Kubernetes 1.3. Oh, okay, that's fine. Oh, sorry. And for short, it is just a daemon running on each node, trying to detect the node problem and report the problems to the API server. And the motivation of doing this is quite simple. During the last several releases, Kubernetes was really suffering from the node problems, especially Docker problems. Sometimes the kernel encountered dialog, sometimes the Docker just hung there forever. And when that happened, Kubernetes can do nothing. But for now, Kubernetes doesn't have any knowledge about this. It will keep on scheduling new pod to the bad node, and the pod will fail and keep on and schedule another one, fail, keep doing this. And to solve this problem, firstly, we need to make this kind of problem visible to the control plane. And if we have this, then we can try to develop some remedy system to remedy the bad node, to save the pods on the node, something like that. So the node problem detector is just for the first step to make the node problems visible. And now the node problem detector is a demo set running on each node, detect problems and report them to the API server. And we know that people are running Kubernetes on various environments, maybe different OS distros, different hardwares, and different runtimes, a lot of scenarios. We know that a single daemon cannot handle all these different environments. So we make the node problem detector totally extensible. It just collects problems from different subdaemons, and we call this subdaemon problem daemon. Each problem daemon just handle a specific kind of problems. For example, the problem daemon can be a tiny daemon just dedicated for the Kubernetes use case. We will introduce kernel monitor later. It is just dedicated for Kubernetes, and we'd really like to work with our community friends to integrate with their existing solution to make it more powerful, to make Kubernetes more stable. And after this, in the future, we may introduce the remedy controller to try to remedy the bad node, but that is the future scope. not now. And for the user-facing API, the node problem detector will report the problem as node condition and event. The node condition is just a field in the node status. We already have some conditions like ready or not, out of disk, or something. And in the future, the node problem detector will report the permanent problem, which makes the node unavailable for pod animal. Report them as node condition, such as kernel deadlock, bad disk, bad use CPU, Docker hung, something. And for the temporary problem, we'd also like to collect this kind of information, so we will report them as event. And this is the current status of the node problem detector. It is an add-on pod running enabled by default in GCE. It is running on each node, and we have introduced the first problem daemon kernel monitor. It is just for the Kubernetes urgent requirement, and also as a reference of other ones. It monitors the kernel log, detects some known issues following predefined rules, and it will report kernel dialog condition. Here is it is totally extensible. You can here is the config file of the kernel monitor. You can see that all the conditions and the problem matching pattern are totally configurable. And this list can be extended over time. When we in the future, when we encounter some other Docker or kernel bug, don't panic. Maybe we can detect it. Hopefully, yeah. And then it is a demo time, because we don't have don't really have a bad node in hand, so we can only inject some IO logs we have seen before to mimic the IO. And now share that. Okay. And firstly, just see the config. It's the same with the previous one I showed. And you can see that now we can catch some temporary errors, such as out of memory killing. And for example, this is the permanent error. We have debugged this for quite a long time in Kubernetes 1.2 release. It is a kernel bug. In fact, it is still there now, but we have a workaround. So in the future, if this happen, at least we can detect this problem and maybe avoid to schedule calling to the node in the future. And some other IOs such as Docker hung, AUFS, hung, something. Okay. And okay, the demo script is just a single script I read for the demo, and we already had. I studied this cluster yesterday. We have 4 nodes running, and we've already studied the node problem detector is running on each node, and let's just care about a random select one. This one. Let's just care about this one. We can see that now we have a new kernel dialog condition. It is false, and it means that the kernel works well, and there is no event now. Firstly, let's inject a meaningless log. This log is full of kernel log if the node is running Docker, and if we inject this, nothing should happen. So let's have a try. Oh, wait. Yeah. Yeah, no events and still false. And then let's try to inject a temporary error. This is an out-of-memory log. And if we inject this, oh, sorry. What? Inject this into the node, we should see an event. Yeah, here is an event we captured. It's out of memory, and the condition is now changed. And now Let's inject the bug we suffered a lot. Oh, sorry. The unregistered net device kernel bug, and let's inject it. Bug node. And the node condition should be the kernel dialog condition should be changed. Let's check it. Yeah, you can see that the kernel dialog now it becomes true, and with the reason unregistered net issue as we configured on the message. And let's have another try to inject the Docker hung. If Docker hung for 2 minutes, the kernel will throw out this call stack, and let's try to inject this. And the condition should be changed. Yeah, you can see that still kernel dialog and the reason is Docker hung, and yeah, with the error message. Yeah, in fact, that's it. That's it. And I mentioned that the configuration is totally extensible. In the future, we can detect more and more kernel bugs and Docker issues. And here is the future plan. So detect the problem in just the first step. After that, we know that there are some bad nodes. We will try to remedy them. And in the future, maybe we'll introduce the remedy controller. It just monitor the node statuses, convert the problems we reported to a tint field. The tint is introduced also an alpha feature introduced in 1.3. It is similar with unschedulable, but not exactly the same. It is more powerful. And after that, maybe we will try to drain the node and reboot the node, start a new one or something. That is for the remedy plan. And more importantly, that we'd really like to detect more problems and to make the node problem detector more powerful. And we cannot achieve that without the community help, because there are so many different scenarios, so many different environments. So we'd really like to work with our community friends to integrate with their existing solution to work together. And any feedback, requirement, contribution are welcome, really welcome. And yeah, if you are interested to work with us or you have any requirements, feedbacks, feel free to contact us. This is my email, GitHub ID, and you can also join our Signals group to or file issue. Elements okay, and we have draft design doc, umbrella issue, and now the node problem detector is a separate repo under the Kubernetes directory. Yeah, that's it.
Lantau, there are a few questions in the chat log. If you have that up, or I can read them if that helps.
I can have a look.
Okay. The first one is on using daemon set.
What do you mean? For something like this?
Bob
asked this question.
Yeah, I was just at a clarification. I mean, I think it seems like on the surface that daemon set is exactly the mechanism that that was built to handle cases like this, where you need to run, one thing per node, for example, to do monitoring activities. So my question here is, why not use daemon set for this?
This is daemon set.
It is daemon set.
Okay, you didn't say that to begin with, and it sort of seemed.
It is daemon set as the pod, but actually there's the one concern because even run the daemon set, then which means we have at today's stage, so we have some dependency on the Docker, and we want this detect all the problem. So there's have the small chicken egg issues actually here.
Yeah, but for for Docker 1.12, the container will not die if
life cycle is not dependent on the daemon.
Yeah. So after 1.12, I think things will get better.
So there was another question in here of what if you aren't using Docker? Is that in future plans?
What's the another?
Validate.
What if, so
Well, that's me again. So I think
Yes, actually we are working on that to provide the alternative container runtime. For example, for 1.4, we have the Rocky latest 1.0 release, which is an alternative the container runtime. Yes. And we also talk to the OCI compatible runtime support, and we ask for community help, like from many different partner, and so they can provide like the runtime plugin. So we are working on the interface at this moment and make that plugin easier and have the more specific requirement for each runtime we expected run as the Kubernetes runtime. Yes.
cool.
Hey, Donna. Quick question, this is Derek. Are there particular problems you think would be out of scope for this node problem detector to detect?
You mean what else problems will be added in the future?
No, like are there particular problems you've already decided up front that would be like not appropriate to detect using this solution? Just wondering if we should, if the community is looking to help, are there certain areas that we've already thought about that would probably be not good fits for this problem detector?
Currently, actually, the node problem detector is just set away how in the Kubernetes node and how we are going to collect the problem and how we are going to propagate this problem. And the node problem detector today is run as a separate daemon side. We're also talking about maybe this is part of the Kubernetes. We talk about this kind of things, not having to finalize that. What's the next step? But there's a lot of problem, and so we have a list of, as Nanta mentioned, that we're going to have this node problem detector, the daemon side. You could plug into different problem detector daemon. And for example, for hardware issues. And for example, we talked to the Intel, they really want help on the by disk, by the CPU, by the memory detection. So they could, once they have that daemon ready, so we can plug into our node problem daemon detector daemon side, and then report those problems for some other use cases. And we also have like our internal GKE. We talk to the MIH team, and they may have some signal give to us, so we can say, okay, GKE node, there are some like virtual node, and there are some issues. This one could make that problem propagate upstream. And we also talk about Kubernetes, because Kubernetes also detects some resource-related problem. So if you think about this, when Kubernetes also is part of response for the resource-related problem detector. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to cut us off here. The best place to go discuss this is Signode, correct? And if you end up needing to break off to another group, then you guys get to do that. So there was a comment or two from Justin Santa Barbara about other status names, things like that. It sounds like those should head into the Signode group. So thank you very much, Lentau, for the demonstration. And we will jump on to today's next topic.
Oh, how to stop this? Okay.
There we go. Thanks, Lentau. TJ, you want to talk about 1.4 timing?
Yes, exactly. I'm going to try to share my screen and hope this works. Usually I'm here to talk about the current milestone. Is everyone seeing that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Usually I'm here to talk about the current milestone, 1.3. Just as a quick reminder, we're hoping to cut beta tomorrow and then launch in 2 more weeks. So about 11 or 12 business days till 1.3 is done, if all goes well. But talking about 1.
Just a question, did you get a volunteer to help with the Friday Burndown?
Sorry, what was it's kind of loud. I think someone might need to be muted, but.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that. Did you get a volunteer to help with the Friday Burndown?
No, I didn't yet, actually.
I should be able to.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. I think basically the Friday's Burndown meeting is going to be thumbs up or thumbs down on beta. Whether or not we can cut beta is going to be the key thing to answer. Yeah.
Awesome. Go.
Thanks.
Sorry for the derail.
No, that's great. But then pivoting to 1.4 and 1.5, we want to start to set out our schedule and goals for when we can launch these things. So I wanted to put it, this is actually on our community wiki. So you can see github.com Kubernetes community repro, and then wiki is here. So anyone can edit this. I guess don't go deleting it or doing anything too crazy. But just for history, so we launched in July of 2015. 1.1 was just about 16 weeks later. And then 1.2 was 18 weeks after that, but that included Thanksgiving in the US and winter holidays and a lot of vacation time. So probably closer to 16 weeks again. 1.3 is on track, I would say, for about 14 weeks. So it does appear to be moving a little bit quicker, which is nice. So that's sort of what things are looking like. So I sort of took that as an input, and the other input I took as axiomatic was that we want to have 2 more minor version releases this year. So in 2016, we would want to have both a 1.4 and a 1.5. And so given that, it looks like we'll have to move a little bit quicker, compress the milestones. And so this is kind of how 1.4 and 1.5 would lay out, given those items. For 1.5, I picked December 9th as a Friday. That gives us about a 1-week buffer to the 16th if things slip. But then a week after the 16th is the 23rd, and that's probably not a time that we'd want to release. There'll be a lot of people on vacation and things like that. So basically, all I did was work back from December 9th, looking at weeks on the calendar and where things are. And that would look like 2 11-week milestones. And so if we sort of do our typical between coding and the sort of bug fix and release parts, that would be 7 weeks of coding and 9 weeks of bug fix. The difference between 1.3 is laid out here. So 1.3 was 9 weeks of coding and 5 weeks of stabilization. So it'd be shaving 1 week off stabilization and 2 off of coding. The 2 off of coding, I think we stand a decent chance for, because we have been better about pushing planning earlier. Realistically, we probably did 6 weeks of coding in 1.3. The first several weeks were still a lot of planning and some early design and things like that. I didn't see a lot of code moving early. And the 5 weeks of stabilization, that's a toss-up. If we can move to 4, I think that we're putting a lot of effort into flakes and submit queue fixes now. And so if the submit queue stays healthy, that will certainly help getting everything in the last few weeks of coding. And if we keep the flakes under control, obviously that helps during stabilization. So it's a little aggressive on the timeline, but I don't think it's unreasonable. That said, looking for feedback and everything, the only other thing I built in was one week post release of 1.3 before we start 1.4 in earnest, for sort of a flake week. People had been bouncing around the idea of having a fix-it, having sort of everybody rally around fixing flakes and fixing test issues and fixing test infrastructure issues and whatever all the things we need to do to really set us up for 1.4.
And also spending a bunch of time in that, enabling the community and teaching in the community to help with that going forward.
Yeah, totally. So that's basically it. The only other note is for 1.5, I did do 5 weeks of stabilization and release because the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday is in there. But the winter holidays would not be, we'd probably start 1.6 January 2nd, something like that. But looking for feedback and everything, I think that we're relatively constrained, though, if we actually want to get 2 minor releases out this year.
We had been talking more broadly about moving to a time-based release as opposed to a feature-based release. Is that really, by saying we're going to do 2 more this year, is that really the proposal here, is that we will do the 2 more? That's the presupposition, as you said, and then we will fit the features that fit into them as they come, and then they will slip. Any feature that doesn't make the release cutoff will slip to the next one.
Yeah, I think that's what we would have to full on make the pivot to say that's how the project works and how the project runs. In 1.3, we did hold ourselves to a pretty high standard on this feature complete date, saying there were several things that were very close and we pushed them out. And that's painful at times, but stabilization has been better this time than in past times. So I think we've seen the result of that, of really cutting down the churn on time. So yeah, I think it would just mean that if you miss this August 19th or this November 4th date listed feature complete, that's it. Feature just slides to the next one.
Are there thoughts or comments on that outside of the specific timeline?
So what exactly is the definition of feature complete?
The definition is that we've said that you're in the queue with all code required for new features plus end-to-end tests. In 1.3, we said, but not counting docs. And of course, not accepting that the code could be buggy, there could be flakes. Like there's a lot of things that you discover after the feature goes in and really gets beat up by the PR builder.
So when you say end-to-end tests, are you talking about end-to-end tests running as part of the PR builder or something that's non-gating, non-blocking off to the side?
Running as part of the PR builder. Like the test that you submit on feature complete date should be running continuously, the day after.
I think, to be clear, I mean, not necessarily in the PR builder, with a smaller set, but in the overall EDE suite in general.
So I'm asking from the perspective of Eric Toon's fantastic work on this whole feature proposal workflow. I was sort of curious if we're actually like committing to doing that and using that to sort of document what feature is and what feature complete is and what the steps are to move through the process, that sort of thing.
Yes, definitely. I do want to go use that. I think that will help a lot towards the end, towards, like you say, both ensuring what features feature complete applies to, of course, and then also the end of milestone as we go build docs and go, build all the collateral around announcing it. We'll have that sort of ready in one place.
Okay, I look forward to seeing that.
So, and this will also be touched upon in the product management update that we're getting next, because there's a broader picture of this.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Any further discussion on this, or are we good to go with these are our dates and we hold each other and ourselves accountable for them going forward for 1.4 and 1.5? If you're on mute and vehemently arguing, then we've missed it, and I'd say we make these go forward. This is awesome, TJ, thanks.
Hey, Sarah. One thing I would just suggest, having gone through big release cycles like this before, is just to do a retro after the next release cycle and just make sure that we're not making assumptions or things that, our future selves are not being held accountable for things that we can't see right now.
For our past selves' mistakes? Wait,
exactly.
Is that supposed to do?
Yeah, so that's my 2 cents.
Yes, so we generally do a retrospective after the release in this community meeting, and we were not as good last time. Okay, so 1.2 we kind of did it ad hoc. 1.1 we did it ad hoc. 1.2 we did it with about 4 hours notice, so people didn't feel that there was a lot of time to give feedback. And this time I will put it on the schedule right now for the week after the release. So
I would strongly advocate that needs to be a lengthier meeting with a single agenda, and that we shouldn't try to squeeze it into the 20 minutes in a community meeting. It needs to.
Okay.
Yeah. And I happily volunteer to facilitate if that's helpful. done a lot of those. So if that's something that'd be useful, I'm more than happy to do that. So
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. All right. So we will schedule an out of band or out of this meeting about a postmortem. We will publish information about it here so that we know when we're having it and get the right people invited. And then we will go forward with that. Awesome. All right. Any further commentary on this, or are we on to the product management agenda item? Sweet.
Sorry, Yellow. Go ahead.
Nope, I think you
sorry, hi.
Igor and Bob are
Can
up.
everyone hear me?
Yes,
Oh, okay, got it.
yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. TJ and I are in the same room, not projected, so that's the failure. All right. So as we talked about last week, we want to formalize the feature process by which things get approved and into Kubernetes as a whole. For those that have been paying attention on the Kubernetes dev mailing list or at last week's community meeting, we shared many times. I also tried to reach out to as many folks as I possibly could track down to ensure that everyone was aware of the formation of this group and that we are currently in the process of putting together some plans. Since then, we've already engaged and started to create some high-level documents right now. We do currently have a feature repository that you can go and create features in. There's a walkthrough for how to go about that and things like that. But most importantly, we do have a feature proposal, which I believe, all right, I don't see, Igor, are you there? Mike, are you there?
Mike?
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, we're here. Yeah.
Yes. So we do currently have a feature proposal, and this is, again, how we would like to run the organization as a whole, or the project as a whole, where the community decides on the features that ultimately make it similar to some other best practices that we've seen across the open source world. So I guess without further ado, would you like to present the proposal and walk us through your thinking?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Let me share my screen.
Yeah, and I'm going to share the link to our chat for everybody can visit it, like the link to our draft document, and also note taker, please send it to them in announcement.
So there are a number of kind of, sorry, wrong doc. There are a number of proposals that's been around, right? So we started with a proposal Eric and Madhu, I believe, put together back in April, right? This is a proposal that describes the idea of feature repository, right? And so we created, Ihor and me created a second document, which we're probably going to merge into this one if everyone agrees, right? So this document, I think there has been a number of comments and it's more about how to create the feature, what should be in the feature, what happens with the feature next, right? And so, and there is a FAQ on why it's important. And so what we did was extended it further kind of to specify the features. Let me quickly walk people over it, right? So the document link is shared for the is open for the comments. So the idea is basically to build a kind of hierarchical project management tool on top of GitHub, which, as all of us know who use GitHub, is non-trivial. And the point of having it kind of, I think for a lot of people, the experience was, while there are a bunch of PRs, it's pretty hard to track hierarchically what features are actually going into the release, what's the state of the features. People use sticks, community meetings, constantly asking questions. So what happened with pet sets? What happened with this? What happened with that, right? So the idea is to kind of, as much as possible, to automate this process and be able to maintain continuous dashboard on top of GitHub features and underlying PRs about the status of each issue, right? So we start with features, kind of all the features need to be created based on previous document. And then when people start creating PRs, right, the suggestion is instead of carefully embedding links to all the PRs into the feature, which kind of may or may not happen, to insist that all PRs should be labeled specifically non-bug PRs, right? Things like feature, proposal, documentation, end-to-end test. They all should contain a label with feature and its ID or something of this type, so that we can build some simple code to scan all the repos and basically automatically link PRs into the feature set, into the features. And that way we can maintain the hierarchy, what's related to the feature. It also allows us to scan for the orphan PRs, and then SIG leads should be responsible for appropriately labeling these PRs. Any questions, concerns on that aspect of it?
Why specifically call out non-bug PRs?
I mean, kind of, we can define, kind of, right, this is a proposal. I'm open to kind of suggestions, right? But if the kind is feature or discussion proposal or documentation, right, the idea, it has to belong to some feature. Bugs may be the bugs from the previous life.
Sure. Just in the context of like the current release cycle, right? Like there are still a lot of bugs that are open that we're going to squash before we get the release out. So I'm trying to understand if bugs are something that are, the closure of bugs is not necessary to reach feature complete, or if the closure of bugs is necessary to reach feature complete.
So yeah, so it's kind of the below was, right? So if the bug is clearly related to the feature here, right, then yeah, it should be labeled with a feature, right? But sometimes there are bugs which come out of previous releases, and they're hard to attribute to current set of features being released. So I don't think those necessarily have to be labeled, right? That's basically the logic behind it. All the new bugs related to the features, yeah, they should be labeled. And it also helps with tracking kind of feature quality, so to speak.
Okay, so bugs don't necessarily block a feature, but issues that are labeled with the feature label do block a feature.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's scalable only up to a point, right? So we have to rely a lot on SIG leads, or if they have a lieutenant or whoever they kind of have in the SIG, right, who is responsible for enforcing this behavior, right? The alternative is just to automatically not merge any PRs that don't have related feature label. So if this is enforced, kind of, it's pretty straightforward to create dashboard which features are part of the milestone and what's the progress on each of the features, such as proposal kind of being accepted, proposal in the discussion, coding is in progress, and so on and so forth, right? Which will give visual indicators to what's going on with release, and we can maintain it somewhere online. So that people stop asking continuous questions, what's going to be in the release, what's the status of this particular feature. So the other things kind of, and that should interleave with the dates that TJ proposed, some of the proposals, observations from 1.3 and prior to that, right? All features must have an owner and committed implementers by week 4. This is arbitrary date. We can do week 3, week 5, I don't know. That's up to discussion with TJ and community. Basically, it's feature proposal freeze. What happened in 1.3 is there were a bunch of features which came out of 6. They were marked P0, and then mid through the cycle, it turned out that nobody is implementing them because resources were moved. So to avoid this situation. And then all PRs with actual implementation proposals need to be LGTM'd by week 7. And the idea behind it, there is limited number of maintainers. They're pretty busy people. So if we can front load all the approvals of proposals, it will help tremendously with kind of throwing away features at the end, which were LGTM'd. Proposal was LGTM'd like 1 week before the code freeze, before the feature freeze. Any objections to kind of enforcing that type of discipline?
I had a question in the chat. Where are we with non-core project members being able to add labels, given that this is a requirement of the proposal?
Yeah, I mean, so the SIG leads typically can add labels, right? Or we need, so we are also working on this owner's proposal from Brian, right? So hopefully there'll be more owners who are able to add features to the particular PRs.
Mike, one of the other things about this is that it's going into the features repository, which we will be able to make much more permissive so that people will be able to add their own labels to it. So we will start adding more people who have permissions on the features repository, as in not a free-for-all, but close.
Yeah, but PRs with code still need
PRs,
to have
yes,
feature
absolutely.
Yeah.
Could you comment on large features that might get implemented over time in kind of a phased way? Some people might call that an epic. The idea that you might have a big feature that is open over multiple releases, or there's the thought here that should get broken up instead?
I think the intent is kind of, right, we can have a feature and call it epic, as you pointed, but then have sub-features which fit into single release, right? Because if they start spawning over the release, it's hard to track what went in, what went out.
So I would concur and agree that that would be a good way to do it. It'd be nice to see that spelled out here in the proposal.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
I'd like to comment on that label issue. Since we moved to restricted branches, we should be able to more freely give out the right access to the Kubernetes repo, because the people who can actually merge code is not the people with push access. So we probably can work to getting more people the ability to add labels.
I agree, Eric, but anybody that can add labels can add LGTM, which will cause things to get merged. So I would like the owner's implementation finished before we start doing that.
Okay.
I mean, I share the concern, but I think the label is kind of requirements are relatively minimal, and I think kind of SIG leads can should be able to add these labels in the first few weeks of the release cycle. So,
out of curiosity, is there a scale problem as the number of labels increase in GitHub here? Just wondering if that label drop-down selector is going to get huge.
Yeah, unfortunately, GitHub does not have any other mechanism, right, to track anything.
Let me ask a question of the community. Does anyone use ZenHub or an alternative like overlay to GitHub? I've heard generally good things, but I wouldn't want to explore it unless we had kind of consensus.
We tried GitHub internally, and there are a number of limitations which don't scale for larger projects.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure I don't know, we tried it a couple months ago. Maybe ZenHub keeps addressing them. They also require full write access because they store all the metadata in the GitHub itself. So.
I also think that we kind of have made a decision all along that we need to enable people to use vanilla GitHub, like just random people who run up to the project. And so the concern with a lot of these tools is that while they provide utility, they kind of make vanilla GitHub impossible to use.
Fair enough.
Does this proposal extend to the other repos that are underneath Cube itself, or even some of the tangential ones? So like getting a feature into CAdvisor, follow this path, feature, maybe even the node problem detector that was just demoed? Or is this intended to just cover the main Cube repo?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question very well. If somebody else could repeat it.
I think
would this cover the node problem detector, for example, or other sub repos of the Kubernetes org?
We're just we're scoped right now just to work thinking about the feature repo. We're obviously open if it works here, or if any other SIG owner or if any other repo owner would like to adopt similar tools, techniques, and so on. That'd be great. But let's try during this discussion to talk about this.
Yeah, I'm just trying to tie this back to like a feature like SIG-node might track, right? So like a feature that we do like adding device mapper accounting support, right? And majority of that work is in CAdvisor. So I'm just wondering, like, do we have to plan everything along all these tangential repos with this in mind, or like the labeling would have been kind of not well served on that particular feature. So I'm just trying to think through that.
Yeah, I mean, this is neither process for process's sake, nor do we have to have like a 100% like every 100% solution on day 0. Our goal is that it should be the exception, not the rule, or excuse me, the rule, not the exception. That everything follows this path. If it makes sense to have an exception or something like that, and if the community decides that, hey, it's okay, then fine. We're not going to be dictatorial about this. But right now we have no process, no rule whatsoever. We're trying to kind of take our first MVP at this.
Yeah, and once again, the idea is kind of to simplify tracking what's in the particular release and what the status of the particular features is, right? If some things, if it covers like 95% of the PRs and features, I think it would be great. We can deal with the rest of it out of band.
So in terms of the PRs with proposals line that I'm looking at right now, does that mean that if I wanted something in release 1.4, that I need my proposal merged into the mainline repo by week 4 or week 7 in order for it to still be counted for release 1.4?
I mean, in this one case, it's week 7.
So I guess I would sort of anticipate that week 7 sort of looks like it lines up with feature complete coding should have stopped and we should have just done bug fixes. So we probably want the proposals in earlier than that.
No. So as it says in the comment, those are kind of arbitrary weeks picked up on 16-week cycles. So shorter release cycles should adjust those weeks correspondingly.
I guess what I'm proposing is something of a little more formal gate baked into the release process by which we say if proposals aren't actually reviewed and vetted and have reached some sort of phase. I don't know if that's alpha, beta, or GA, right? But like some amount of that should be done.
Yeah, I mean, if people in general kind of in agreement that there should be this gate, I'll work with TJ to add it to his release 1.4 and 1.5 dates.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I think that the two things that are here, the only two things that are captured here is we really don't want to have kind of the issue that we ran into this time, which is there were a set of P0s where owners were not identified early on and they just kind of languished out there, number one. And number two, there's the reality of when our code freezes. And those are the only two realities represented here. If the community decides that we want a proposal gate, I am all for discussing it and seeing if it makes sense.
I just think you avoid games of release chicken by providing clarity and clear exit criteria as you move from one phase to the next. That's all.
So we absolutely do have that. It's not represented here. Please go to the Kubernetes feature repo and click on Issue Template. In that, you have a series of gates related to alpha, beta, stable. I'll post that in the, and each one has a set of check marks next to it that are required. So it's not date driven, but it is kind of stability or I guess completeness driven. We've heard from the community generally that dates or even T- dates aren't fantastic. More give clarity around the thing. That said, if something isn't clearly passing alpha by call it the code freeze date, it's not going to make the release.
Yeah, clearly, I agree. We're trying to decouple the life cycle of features from the life cycle of the Kubernetes project, but we need to be very clear about what the touch points are when we sync those things back up. That's all that I'm asking for.
Yeah, I think that's very fair.
Fair enough. And then, I mean, if there are features which have to be kind of merged past this deadline, right? We need to all kind of go with it. So there has to be elders, community, PM, whatever the group has to do the discussion and approve it, at least informally. And there should be full understanding that it means there is a scope creep and that may jeopardize release dates. So, and as I said, ideally all bugs raised with a feature should contain a feature label to track it back. And then the other observation was on planning, right? Out of last 1.3 planning, there were a lot of 6, which came out only with P0 type features. I don't think it's fully realistic. I think there should be kind of, right, there should be some ratio where there is some amount of P0, some amount of P1s, P2s, P3s coming out of this planning, right? I am kind of open to discussion what the ratio should be. Is it 1/3 P0s, 50% P0s? It's just my observation. We cannot have SIG coming out and saying we're going to have 10 P0s. That's not going to end well. And then, so the reality in 1.3, there are a bunch of features were deprioritized in the middle of the release cycle to P1s or P2s. And so why not, don't we accept the reality from get-go, do slightly better prioritization up front and split the issues this way? And then kind of reiterates a little bit, right? So owners of the features need to align the resources by week 4. We don't want the situation where there are features with no owners, no resources aligned for it.
That, I mean, to be clear, you know, if you have the people and you have the proposal in and the community feels like this is a good thing and you can accomplish it within the milestone, it's kind of set to go. It's not like, you know, you're going to put in something that we feel is that you know, person A says, well, I don't care about this feature at all. Person B says, I care about it deeply and I'm ready to allocate, you know, 3 devs to work on it. And, you know, based on the proposal we have here, it's going to be accomplished. Then, and the proposal is approved, then it's in. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter that person A said that, you know, this is a P, you know, this is a P100.
Yeah, no. When agreement, it just kind of, it's nice to have this discussion in advance instead of marking something as whatever the priority, and then turns out, it's again, it's all just to add the clarity, and then turns out that nobody aligned actually any people to work on it. Kind of that may go back to the features repository to have at least some proposed list of GitHub IDs who is responsible for this feature, so that if people ask questions, they know whom to reach out to. And then kind of another proposal is to introduce, and I think the SLA kind of exists, that owners and maintainers should abide by SLA on the features they manage, right? And if they manage way too many features, that maybe these features should be dropped in advance, right? It just doesn't scale, and it leads to a lot of PR churn in the end. And SLA is basically, right, people should be able to answer within 1-2 working days on whatever comments are made. So basically just a call to manage a little bit more aggressively by everyone what goes into the release. Any objections, questions? So the link is posted in the doc. I would appreciate all the comments, and I'll be working with Ihor and David and TJ to make sure it's all kind of captured.
Thanks so much, Mike. This is awesome. And I actually just tweeted how exciting it is to have the revised workflow coming from the outside community saying, let's refine this better and let's hold each other accountable. So that's super awesome. All right, we've got a couple of minutes left. Were there any other SIGs that wanted to do a very fast report out? We can catch up with SIGs next week then. That sounds like a plan since we're running rapidly out of time. So let me cover notices again for the people who weren't here at the very beginning. We tried the Asia-friendly timing for 2 months on one meeting a month, and we had more people for whom it was super inconvenient than people appearing where it was more convenient at that time. So until we get a larger call for something that is friendly for Asia and other parts of Asia specifically, India was more inconvenienced, for example, by the other timing. We will leave this at 10 a.m. every week. Just rise and shine and join us for 10 a.m. Pacific time. There's a point about documentation. TJ mentioned that documentation was not part of feature complete this time for 1.3. That means now is the time to get your documentation in. We had a lot of trouble around 1.2 getting documentation in after the release. So we want to get as much of it in before the release. So please prioritize, please ask for help if you need help. Please get us documentation in for the 1.3 release. And then my last notice is the Kubernetes first birthday is July 21st, and we want to do some fun celebrations around the world. And I need help with that, as does Bob Herdinsky, to make that happen in more locations than just where we are. So please send us emails if you are interested in helping plan celebrations. Maybe it's a special meetup. We can help with, you know, I don't know, cake and cookies and pie or something. Anyway, we will reach out, please, if you have time and are interested in helping make a Kubernetes first birthday party in your region. And that's it for notices. Does anybody else have any other notices to be added? Beta is coming. The beta release is coming. Free birthday beer.
Hey, Sarah, I had one question. I was chatting in the background with some folks. It's not always clear what SIG aligns with necessarily a particular feature someone in the community might do.
Okay.
Like, in my head, I was just thinking through things that we have worked in the past and trying to think of the SIGs I participate in, and think it's not always a clear overlap. So do we intend to associate past features with existing SIGs?
I think that's an open question for past features. I think it seems
like, for example, like someone, you know, jobs went into the API, right? And someone goes and does scheduled jobs, right? Like, what SIG is that associated with? And like in my head, I could say, I don't know, machinery, but when I participate in that, it's not really there. So I guess very much the proposal is tied to SIGs, and I feel like a lot of the features we work on isn't necessarily associated with a clear SIG right now. And maybe I'm wrong in that assumption.
No, I think that's true. I think that's a reasonable question. And to your point, it's about associating existing features with SIGs as opposed to the new ones going forward, which the feature proposal template should handle. I think it would be a great exercise, and certainly is something that we can work on as we roll forward and touch and update those features. We can try to align them with a special interest group. Is that the right choice?
Yeah, I don't know if it actually is the right choice, which makes me question the original proposal sounded to be so SIG biased. Versus maybe more feature owner biased, or like existing owners in the code base bias. So that's just the thing I was trying to wrestle through my head. That's all.
You think there's enough, do you or the rest of us think there's enough meat here to have a longer conversation next week about that? By which I mean, are you game to lead one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be helpful to look at like the set of features that we've worked on in the past. I don't, just to ask where they align, but if you're asking next week in the community meeting, I guess I don't know if I will have the time to prepare for that, but it's just an open question. Maybe we can talk about it on Kubernetes Dev.
Okay. We can do that and see if it bubbles up to be something that should be a conversation proposal kind of thing here.
I guess I would add one quick thing on this, which is basically, I find that these taxonomic organizations just never fit perfectly, but that the organization itself is worth it. So I wouldn't worry too much, I guess, about finding the perfect fit for any particular feature. The point is to find some home and to find some owner and move forward with that. And so I think what David said earlier about how like, this isn't supposed to be a totally perfect fit really applies. I don't know, maybe SIGs is so bad a fit that we want to try something else, but I don't want to spend too much time analyzing this and trying to define the perfect economy because I just don't.
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to suggest, Brendan. So like, and that's why I was trying to correlate it back to like owners that are, or like the owner's file that's already in the current repo is probably like the ad hoc SIG that would form around something if you're touching it. Like, like whoever's like, if you, I'll just pick an example. Like if you wanted to do a feature in jobs, like whoever is the current listing of owners in like the job package, that seems like the ad hoc SIG who should work together on this. And maybe we should update the workflow proposal to kind of reflect what we anticipate would be more ad hoc. That's all.
I don't know. I feel like if it's too ad hoc, it's going to be hard to get it to run. And so starting it in the SIG and then having them defer to people who are in those owners files may be the right way to just to have a touch point for a place to start from, right?
Yeah, like the CLI, I don't think has, is there a clear SIG for that? Maybe I'm just not attending it, or
well, there's UX, right? Isn't there a SIG UX? You know,
There is.
like I think that's what covers the CLI is the, and that's kind of broad, I guess. UX is kind of broad, but I think that's what covers it.
So we are at 11 o'clock. It seems like there's enough that this discussion should continue maybe on the email list or in the Slack channel. And Brian has also been sending notes in here about the owner, where the owners are documented, and that he either has created or will create GitHub teams for future owners. So there is more discussion, it sounds like. So apologies, it is 11 o'clock. I am losing my room, and I will see you all next week.
Thanks all. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
Thank you. Bye.